The glitz and glam is the fame, but it's the work backstage that makes the game. I'm Christelle and Levea Bandal, your host. Come with me behind the lens and watch their stories unfold. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Lens. Our next guest is a fashion designer and MC from the Cook Islands. He aims to be an instrument to empower others to rise above their enclosed feelings. And today we get the chance to sit and chat with him to learn about his childhood, his experiences, the challenges he's faced, and his hopes for the future. Please welcome Isaia.
Thank you, Crystal, for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you again for giving us the opportunity to come here and meet with you. So I think for our audience to know more about you, we'll start from your roots. Where were you from and how was your childhood growing up?
Well, I'm 24 years of age at this stage. I was born and raised in the beautiful country called the Cook Islands, located in the South Pacific Ocean. I was born and bred there. I did finish all my schoolings there and had an idea to venture across the board to just envision and take more experiences on board, hence why I'm here in Australia.
Yes. And being in the Cook Islands, were you always a creative child?
Living there in the Cook Islands, every Polynesian people, as most of everybody would know, we're all quite creative in our own ways, whether it's instrumental, creating, or living day-to-day life. So yes, I was a creative one, sometimes out of the ordinary. People would think I'm crazy with some of the ideas I would come up with, whether it's setting up food or creating designs for garments or just an everyday, ordinary living style, lifestyle.
And were your schoolings, like your subjects, courses, always related to creativity?
Actually, most of them were just your basic English, math, science. Of course, it was compulsory that we spoke our mother tongue, which was Cook Islands Maori. I took on tourism as well. So I could probably say some of it was related to being artistic and designing. It was fast forward lifestyle that we had back in the Cook Islands.
Yeah, and then you mentioned you moved over to Australia. How old were you when you moved here?
That's actually a funny question. I moved here a couple of years ago, if I could recall, about 20 years old.
Okay.
I actually only came to Brisbane to visit a family member, my uncle. I only came over for a holiday. And then I just got very curious of what the whole hustle and bustle of Brisbane was like. I just decided to go and apply for jobs. I got accepted into just doing your normal hospitality day-to-day routine. And I decided to leave everything behind in Cook Islands in my mother's capable hands and just moved over. And I had a feeling I would come over, work, just to save a bit of money and go back home and celebrate my 21st birthday with my families and friends. Hence why I moved here to Australia.
That's nice. And what made you move to Australia?
Moving into Australia was a hard decision, as any young teenage would feel like. Especially leaving our parents behind and our grandparents, especially when I've grown up with them since I was little. I just moved here. Sometimes we don't know what life holds for us. I feel there was more to what I needed to explore that my little country wasn't offering at the time. So that's why I came here to Australia. So I lived in Brisbane and I heard of Sydney and I moved down here to Sydney and I've just fell in love with it since I've moved here.
Yeah, Sydney's very busy.
Very fast, more busier than Brisbane and my home country. So, yeah.
What kind of opportunities were you after?
I think at the time I wasn't after any particular opportunity. My main focus was to just try out what I've learned in hospitality background. My family is made of many components of hospitality. My grandmother was a head chef. A couple of my aunties were chefs. My mother was a restaurant manager at the time as well. So I think it kind of reached out over me to continue that. I could remember my grandma's like, don't get into hospitality, it's just gonna be very boring. And did I listen? No, I didn't. I continued that. But ultimately, I wanted to move over and step my foot into the aviation industry and be a flight attendant.
Yeah.
So that's what I was after, but small steps at a time.
Wow, so
Yeah.
from hospitality you wanted to go into aviation.
Yes,
How-
a very fast, dramatic change of thought.
How did that go?
I think to say more or so, it went well. I started off working at the cafe again in the airport here in Sydney International Airport, and gradually made my way working for a company that dealt with airlines along the lines of Singapore, Emirates Airways, Philippine Airlines. I did that for a couple of years. Great experience. So I'm still vying for that.
Yeah. What are you trying to be a flight attendant?
Yes,
Is that what you want
still vying to be a flight attendant. But I think at the moment where I am now, it's I've just put that on hold, just to seek other avenues of what there is out there before I decide to lock myself up in an aeroplane 24/7.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah. It sounds like you're living a very adventurous life, going from one place to another.
I'm quite adventurous.
Yeah.
I like to do different things. Like I mentioned before, people think I'm quite crazy. And let's let those people think that, because they're allowed to think that. But most of hospitality has always been a great backbone of my career at this stage. Venturing as a flight attendant is quite a lot of work at this stage. I just feel like maybe you'd relate to it is if we feel like we can accomplish what we would like to, something else always steps in the way. So we have to put our careers on hold to be able to venture through life with different things. So yes, I'm still vying, but at the moment I'm quite cool where I am.
Jumping from one career to another. And I actually met you at a ball, and you came in as the most fashionable, stylish person in there. You have a career in the fashion industry at the moment?
At the moment, I'm sitting on that line of being creative. Yes, I arrived to the ball and everybody was looking and saying, "Who is this person?" You know, and I remember we had an eye-catching conversation when you mistrailed because you were the MC on the evening.
Yes,
and
I was.
I remember at 1 second you looked at me and you didn't know what you were saying because you were so in awe of the fashion. So yes, I'd like to venture into that world, but you know, there's never one thing we can focus on. I'd like to try out different things. It's always a trial and everything. I like the fashion. I like to draw my own little artistic patterns and ask someone to sew them for me. So it's quite a colorful world that I live in, as so some people may say.
So when you were younger, your family were telling you, or your grandma, to be specific, was telling you to stay away from hospitality.
She actually told me because the reason for that is she's experienced it. You know, being in the kitchen for hours on hours, going home, going to work when the sun is still down, coming home when the sun goes down again. So she never got to spend much time with her family as so she has felt. And that's when my mother and my auntie ended up working alongside with her in the same hotel. I guess her main goal was to just for her grandkids to have other careers and to fulfill their own willingness of what they would like to do instead of following the trend as most of our Cook Island people would do. So if you would just understand that most of us move over to Australia or New Zealand just to have better jobs, find better lives. But when we start seeing the money rolling in and we see the big city lights and what's available there, we kind of get carried away. So I think it was more like a precaution from my grandma. And she wasn't wrong about it. So I had to put my foot into that dark space to see what she really meant.
Yeah.
But all in all, it was not a wrong choice that I made. So it was great.
That's good. And what does she think about you in the fashion industry?
She thinks I'm quite crazy. She sees all my images and photos up on, she doesn't have Facebook, but she has people telling her, shout out to my grandma if she is watching this soon. She thinks it's quite crazy, but at the same time, she agrees. Because I do a lot of event setups when I used to work in the hospitality industry in the Cook Islands. And to all my Cook Island people watching, they would know what I'm talking about. So my grandma knew I was always a creative person. You could give me a rubbish bag and a broom, I'd make you look $1 million. Fantastic. So she's happy, but she's in awe and crazy. She's like, what are you doing this and doing that? But she said to me, stick with the fashion stuff. It looks more easier and more fun.
Yeah, it definitely is. Were you always envisioning yourself to be involved in fashion and creativity from a young age?
I did. But to be honest, it was more so wherever I got a job, and as long as I was making money to provide for my family, that's where I was going at the stage. But since moving here to Australia, I've bumped into a couple of people. I've met wonderful people that's stirred me into the way of being a fashion designer. Any young person like myself would love to be a fashion designer. But I guess it's just a little secretive, dark thoughts in our minds that speak behind us, that saying, no, you're not good enough for this, or we listen to other people's comments that distract us from doing what we really want. So yes, of course, my dream one day is to own my own label, all work in progress as everything else. So definitely.
Sounds amazing, sounds fabulous, and you're well on your way there. This is something you made, designed?
Something I designed, something I suggested, but this is actually, if I could mention a designer from the Cook Islands, her name is Fiona. So Fiona Matutu owns the Wadiki Wear brands. She designs Polynesian, bold, artistic garments for men's and women's. And she's actually just released children's wear, inspired by her own little daughter.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yes. So every time I ask her to sew a shirt for myself, I don't want it to be like anybody else's. And she even said, you should just start doing your own stuff. So I'm on the way there.
Yeah.
I'm on the way.
Yeah, what inspires you when you're creating these pieces?
I guess my inspiration just comes from my surroundings, all the colors, all the plants, even colors of the cars, the stuff that people wear, food, most importantly, what draws my attention to inspiration of creating. And I think it's just standing out from the crowd. Some of my friends know, I keep telling them it's a crime to look the same as everybody else wherever you go, if it's a wedding or a birthday. So I think it's just being out of the ordinary, and just being exclusive. So that's my main thing. I think it's boring if you and I rocked up in the same place wearing similar garments, right? Yes. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I really
would. That's my inspiration. But most of all, my grandmother, she's inspired me. She's a very creative woman through the arts of creating vases and flowers for the church, all her church garments for Sunday wears, more on the modest side, to say. So yeah, she's always been my inspiration.
Yeah, so she inspired you into creativity, you could say.
She inspires me in that, and a lot of other things in life as well. Just to be strong, just to believe.
Yeah.
And of course.
And creativity comes in many different forms and sizes, and it takes a lot of practice to kind of perfect it or just try new things. Were you involved in her practices in making things like the vases you mentioned?
Most definitely. I used to be the only boy that would go to the Saturday afternoon church cleanups.
Oh, really?
And I'd be surrounded by all my other grand aunties. And of course, she helped me we'd pick flowers together, we'd cut leaves, we'd design bouquets and vases. She'd tell me what colors don't look good, what colors should go here and there. What kind of fabric she uses to sew her garments. And so yeah, she has been, I've been involved with a lot of things that she has been doing. She's taught me so many 10 million things I could never even mention one of my favorite ones. But the best part is cooking. She'd always involve me in family dinners and cooking. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Did you face any challenges being, like you mentioned, either being the only boy on your Saturday, Sunday activities?
Oh, you know what? I think there was just some sort of personality I had to engage with all my aunties and all grand aunties that came to the church on a Saturday afternoon. I think because I was the only boy there, so it gave them chance that I do all the heavy lifting and pouring all the water out and lifting all the heavy plants. And so I didn't quite feel out of place. And our family was quite loving and caring. I guess these days it's like, no, that's a man's job, but this is a lady's job. These days, any job is anyone's job as long as it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did not feel out of place at all. It was fantastic. It was great.
Yeah, and that's a good change that we're starting to see, that pretty much anyone can do whatever they want to do. Yes. And when you're moving from your hometown to Australia, did you face any cultural challenges?
Cultural challenges. I think most of all, I knew where I was from. I knew what our background was all about, my family history. I knew what was involved in an everyday, ordinary Polynesian person. I guess my only challenge was just understanding the cultural differences here in Australia in respects to the Aborigine people that own, the place that we are at now. Very interesting. I don't think I'd call it challenges. I think I would call it variations of understanding with the Filipino community like yourself, the Fijian and the Samoan community. But most of all, every day is a learning thing for us, or for me to say so.
Yeah.
So I'm still taking on board different types of cultural backgrounds and anything that may present itself.
Yeah. What has been your favorite moment, say, since you moved to Australia?
Oh, I think my favorite moment, just like any other teen, was being able to come here, work, make heaps of money, go out partying on the weekend. Most definitely, hands down. That would have been my favorite part.
Yeah.
But then as time went by, I had to buckle down and be realistic about a few other things. And I think if I didn't, we wouldn't be here sitting here today. I would have just gone up in the wilds, making lots of money, being with people. But I think to say is meeting other family members that I've never met before. So that was one of the best parts. That's the best part of moving over.
Sounds like you've been everywhere and doing so many things at once. I want to know, what are you actually doing? So you're still in the hospitality industry?
So I'm still in the hospitality industry. To take note, I competed in a competition in New Zealand called Nestle Toke Door, all to do with front of house and back of house competition. Go to say I did win gold medal in front of house, so I'm quite glad for I've accomplished that. So hospitality is where I'm in at this stage. And also, you mentioned before, I do MC as well. And I'm delighted to say that I'm also one of the members for Pacific International Runway. That's been going for a couple of years now. So to sum it up, you can say hospitality, MC, and fashion.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And like anything in between.
Oh no, that's a lot of place to juggle. I don't know how you do it. So coming through your whole past experiences, what has been, let's say, the most important or difficult challenge you've had to overcome, and how did you do it?
I think the most important challenge for me coming here into Australia was knowing who I was. Knowing what my grounds were here in this country, just knowing myself. Being a flamboyant gay person is not very lightly taken in our hometown in Cook Islands back in a few years ago, as so here in Australia as well. I've overcome the fear of not being accepted or being rejected by my community here in Australia, my Cook Island community. I've juggled those challenges a couple of times, and there was moments where it was a very dark time in my own life, which no one knew, because that's just how I wanted it to be. So overcoming my fear of telling everybody, it's like, hey, I'm gay, I'm flamboyant, that's why I look amazing, that's why I wear all these pretty nice things, you know, that's why I put makeup on. And after seeing many others like myself, our Polynesian people, after seeing that it actually happens here, it just gave me a sigh of relief knowing that I'm not the only one doing this. I'm not the only one feeling anxious or not the one feeling rejected on a day-to-day life. In Brisbane, we live in a small town. My uncle has a place in Kingaroy area, and we used to go to the pub every weekend. I used to be the only one that wore really nice, chic, pretty things, and everyone would look really confused at me. And so my uncle supported me. That's all I needed. My mum supported me. My sister and my whole family supported me, and that's all what I really needed. And it just gave me you got this, Isaiah. At the end of the day, if my family believed and really loved me for who I was and for who I am today, no one else's opinions matter. But I do respect that people have their choices of words that they say about others. And I appreciate that, because it just gives you that space of knowing who's your real people that you should hang out with.
Yes.
And who's the ones that you could help, deter their minds of being very negative and just turn it into a positive feeling. So I think that was one of the biggest challenge. Second part was finding a job here in Australia. Very hard. I used to think you just drop your resume and you get a call the next day. No, it's not. I am on my own, moving to Sydney. I live with my family. At the moment, I live with my lovely, loving Auntie Mary Utia. She's just phenomenally amazing. She's just really helped bring me out of the water up onto the land and say, look, this is Australia. This is what you gotta do, and this is how I'm gonna help you. So that's the second challenge I've had to put up with. But that's all great now. We're all moving forward now. I'm moving forward now. And I'm glad to say moving forward with a lot of great people in every aspect of life, the industry, fashion, food, hospitality, and social just in general.
Yes,
So-
that's very warming to hear. It's good to hear that through all your experiences and challenges that you had your family support. And I guess Isaiah shows us that no matter what it is or where you come from, sometimes all it takes is maybe moving to a different country and exploring different avenues where you can test and challenge yourself, push yourself and see where you can go, see how far you can reach. Because you never really know. Life comes very unexpected, and it's up to you to write it for yourself. We'll see you guys next time at Behind the Lens.
I went from job to job, from being an ashtray boy up at Star City Casino, cleaning ashtrays on the floor. I got a part-time job at cafes just down the road where I live. Just little jobs like that to get me along the way, and it's hard coming here.
From learning about his childhood, his experiences, and the challenges he's had to overcome, from moving to his hometown to a completely different country, Isaiah shows us that life is fulfilled with contributing many different puzzles that comes from the challenges and experiences you've had from when you were born. He shows us that personality is built on from having the confidence and from being a strong person, strong enough to reach out to other people, to seek support and help, and strong enough that you can push yourself past the challenges. This is another episode with Behind the Lens. We'll see you guys next time.